I would imagine that I had the pleasure of working in that building for maybe 4 or 5 years. And as I said, it really had its own personality. You could never sneak up on somebody. If you were walking down the hall, no matter how quietly you walked, they heard you. If you were walking up or down the stairs, it would creak.
The whole building was almost falling apart.
The judge didn't have any chambers, and what he did have was a small room in the back next to where they repaired the parking meters.
To get to the judge's chambers, you had to go to the attic. And I don't know if you remember these old structures, the attics were, they were slanted.
Yes.
I was invited to go up to chambers to visit with Judge Petrone to find out about what my duties would be. And Judge Petrone was a wonderful man, a very good judge, very fair judge, and he was a great teacher. And I benefited tremendously working for him, or learning from him for about 7 years before I became the supervising judge. I walked in, I hit my head on the ceiling. I'm 6'3", and as I walk in, and as he's saying duck, I was nervous, of course. I walked right into the slanted ceiling. So to say the least, every time from that day forward, I would go up there, I would be bent over, and Judge Petrone was kind enough to share his desk with me. We only had the one room. It was very small. It was an attic.
And then, of course, the custodian, and I remember his name, Freddie, he had an apartment upstairs at the top. There was an apartment.
So
he lived there. He lived in the courthouse and police headquarters, and he took care of it. And then they repaired the police vehicles on that little garage on the back.
Well, former judges, as far as I would be Petrone. I mean, he was a fantastic man and a fantastic judge.
The area was small, the courtroom was small. It had a juror's box, it had a bench, and you could probably fit 60 to 80 people in the courthouse.
So what the police used to do is when they had a prisoner, they would handcuff him to a bench in the building, in the hallway. So I would, as the judge, I would walk right past the prisoner who was handcuffed to the bench. And I do have I do recall a funny story. And behind the building is the creek. There's a creek that runs by it, right by the arterial highway. And the police had arrested a young lady that was passed out down in the orchard. This was probably 15 years ago. And they had arrested her for disorderly conduct. She had passed out on the sidewalk. And they had her handcuffed to the bench. And court was in session, so they had to wait to arraign her until court was completed. So maybe an hour or so had to go by. Well, she managed to free herself from the bench by breaking the arm of the bench. Meanwhile, the bench was as probably old as the building. It was a wooden bench, solid mahogany bench with arms on either side, but it also had its own personality because it would creak, it was loose, and it was old. So she, sitting there for the hour waiting to be arraigned, shook the arm until she broke it off. And the story is, and I was in the courtroom, is that she was running down behind the building, and Richie Famaletti, who was the building superintendent at the time, was chasing her, and he finally caught her in the creek. So the two of them were rolling around the creek, and they brought her back to be arraigned. So
we had a record pilot, which we still have a newspaper. And one of the reporters' name was Bob Murray, who was the top reporter, and he did most of the work. And he wanted me to share with him a flight over Glen Cove in a Piper Cub, and we had a conversation that was taped concerning the areas that we had observed from the air. And of course, what stood out was the roof of that courthouse, which had a golden glow to it. It just, when the sun hit it, had a big shine. You couldn't miss it. It just stood out.
Anyway, I have a gavel that I inherited from my predecessor, Supervising Judge Joseph Petrone. This is the gavel. As long as I've been on the bench, either in the Old Courthouse or here, this gavel has been on the bench and served whatever judge was sitting here in administering his duties. It is very heavy. It's about 5 pounds, and it's engraved Glen Cove City Court. And it's just another piece of history that I like to keep with me when I'm administering to my duties, just to remind me of the position I hold and the importance that it serves in the city of Glen Cove.
I think it's a beautiful, wonderful idea that we're making this courthouse into a museum. I think that it makes it a foundation now in Glen Cove, and it will bring in people from all over. Initially just the North Shore, but eventually from all over, because it's going to attract people from around the whole area of Nassau County and Suffolk County.
And then south of, at the end of Lawrence Lane, going into Glen Head, were horse farms. So we were allowed to ride our bikes. It was only maybe a half a mile. We would be able to ride our bikes to the horse farms and feed apples to the horses and things like that. And it was really very much more countrified than it is now. Now it's very much developed.
Way back in the 30s and 40s, we had different areas. The orchard was right where Stango's restaurant is. It's been there for over 50 some odd years.
Right across the street, right next to where Henry's is here on Glen Street, used to be a luncheonette, well, McCrory's, but on the other side used to be a luncheonette called Hamburger Express, where they would serve you with the hamburgers on a train.
And I was installed by the surrogate of Nassau County, who just recently died, John Bennett. In fact, there's a picture up there in back swearing me in at the surrogate's courthouse. And then again, at that time also was really, I had my school teacher from Flushing High School, Margaret Carmen, attend the installation. And I had a special place in my heart for Margaret, because I was her delivery boy at one time. I used to deliver groceries to her house. And while I was away in the service, she always was supporting me. She said, "Joseph, you have to go to school. You have to go to college." And of course, and what she did for me, and I kept in touch through the years at service by mail, and she had obtained all my transcripts from high school and had them waiting at Queens College for me so I could enter without a loss of any delay. So when I got out I was discharged in June, and I started in September at Queens College, and that was a wonderful moment of seeing her and having her there.
I'm sure that was a really thrill for both.
It was a thrill, yeah. And but those are the people that make you. They never leave you. They're always part of your life, and they contributed so much to make it possible for whatever success you had.
Yes.
And I've been blessed that way. There was a sense of independence. We wanted to keep that courthouse, notwithstanding many times there were situations which arose, and the legislature was thinking of placing the city court in the Nassau County court system. But we still wanted our independence. And
I think it's important for all of us to remember where we came from and what we had, and the sacrifices that people made for us to progress to the level that we're at now.
I think it gives Glen Cove meaning. It gives us a sense of responsibility. It shows the people, not just in Glen Cove, but in the whole surrounding area, that we have taken something that was just about ready to be disposed of and made it into a beautiful building. And that's, to me, I love to see old buildings restored. And this one's going to be restored very nicely.
Court is now in recess.